Have you ever wondered why, despite all your devotion, all your prayers, all your spiritual seeking, you still feel separated from God? What if everything you've been taught about where to find the divine has been leading you in the wrong direction? What if the sacred temple you've been searching for your entire life isn't in Jerusalem, isn't in any church or holy building, but is actually the very body you inhabit right now? For thousands of years, humanity has built magnificent cathedrals, traveled to sacred sites, and bowed before altars made of stone and gold, believing that's where God dwells. We've been conditioned to think of ourselves as unworthy visitors, seeking entrance to a divine dwelling place somewhere outside ourselves. But what if this entire paradigm has kept us from the most revolutionary truth ever spoken? That you are the living temple of the Most High. This isn't mysticism or New Age philosophy. This is the forgotten foundation of authentic spirituality that changes everything the moment you truly grasp it. When this truth awakens within you, your relationship with prayer transforms, your understanding of healing shifts, and your entire approach to life's challenges begins operating from a completely different dimension of consciousness. Has this ever happened to you? You pray fervently, asking God to help you, to heal you, to provide for you, yet nothing seems to change. You feel like your prayers are bouncing off the ceiling, never quite reaching their destination. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. The reason might shock you. You've been praying to a God you imagine is somewhere else, when all along, the divine presence you're seeking has been dwelling within the sacred temple of your own being. Think about the profound implications of this for just a moment. Every time you've looked outside yourself for God, you've been turning away from the very place where the infinite presence actually resides. It's like standing inside a magnificent palace, searching desperately for the palace, never realizing you're already there. Stay with me until the end of this message, because what you're about to discover will completely transform how you see yourself, how you pray, how you heal, and how you navigate every challenge you face. This understanding has been hidden in plain sight within the teachings of Jesus, the wisdom of the mystics, and the deepest revelations of every authentic spiritual tradition. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Once you know yourself as the living temple, everything changes, not because you've become something new, but because you've finally remembered what you've always been. The question isn't whether you can become the temple. The question is, what happens inside you when you finally realize you already are? When Jesus stood before the religious authorities and declared, "I am," they wanted to stone him for blasphemy. They thought he was claiming to be God in some exclusive, arrogant way. But they completely missed the revolutionary revelation he was offering. He wasn't saying, "Only I am God and you are not." He was demonstrating what becomes possible when a human being fully realizes they are the living temple, when the consciousness of divinity awakens within the sacred space of a person. This wasn't a claim of superiority, it was an invitation to transformation. Think about the profound impact of this for your own journey. Every time you say the words "I am," you're making a declaration about your identity. But here's the hidden truth most people never grasp. When you speak those two words, who is actually speaking? Is it your personality, your history, your circumstances? Or is it the divine presence that dwells within the temple of your being? This single shift in understanding changes everything. You're not a limited human trying to reach God. You're the temple through which God is expressing right now, in this moment. But here's where most people unknowingly sabotage themselves. Listen to how you use these powerful words in your daily life. I am tired. I am broke. I am sick. I am not good enough. I am afraid. Every single time you attach I am to a limitation, you're doing something spiritually catastrophic. You're claiming that the temple of the living God is defiled by temporary conditions. You're saying that the infinite presence dwelling within you is somehow constrained by circumstances that exist only in the realm of appearances. This is the mindset trap that keeps people bound to suffering even while they pray for freedom. The temple cannot be sick because sickness is a condition of the body, not of the sacred space within. The temple cannot be broke because poverty is a circumstance, not the nature of divine consciousness. When you identify the I am within you, the very presence of God expressing as your awareness, with anything temporary, you're giving power to illusion. You're treating the eternal as if it were subject to the temporary. If this resonates with you, subscribe to the channel. I share practical spiritual wisdom designed to shift your consciousness and transform your daily experience. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because understanding this intellectually isn't enough. The real transformation happens when you begin to catch yourself in these moments of false identification and make a different choice. When you feel pain in your body and your mind automatically wants to say, I am in pain, you pause. You recognize that pain is an experience the body is having, but the temple, the I am, that you truly are, remains untouched, whole, complete. This isn't denying reality. It's discerning between what is temporary and what is eternal, between what happens in the outer court and what dwells in the inner sanctuary. If this revelation is beginning to shift something in your awareness, write in the comments, I am the temple. The most revealing aspect of Jesus' life wasn't what he said, it was how he used language to demonstrate a completely different state of consciousness. Pay close attention to this. He never once declared, I am sick and need healing. He never said, I am poor and need provision. He never claimed, I am weak and need strength. Instead, his declarations were always anchored in eternal truth. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the light of the world. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Do you see the pattern? He only used I am to identify with what is unchangeable, eternal, divine. This wasn't positive thinking or affirmation. This was temple consciousness in action. When Jesus healed the sick, he wasn't performing supernatural miracles that defied natural law. He was operating from a level of awareness where the temple recognizes its true nature, and physical reality has no choice but to align with that recognition. The healings were natural outcomes of consciousness that knows itself as the dwelling place of infinite power. When the temple awakens to what it truly is, transformation isn't something you try to create. It becomes inevitable. Behind the scenes of every healing, every demonstration of abundance, every moment of what we call miraculous intervention, there was simply this: a human being who had completely realized they were the living temple. And from that recognition, the divine presence flowed without obstruction. This is the hidden truth that changes your entire spiritual journey. You've probably spent years, maybe decades, trying to become more spiritual, more worthy, more enlightened. You've meditated, prayed, studied, practiced, all in the pursuit of reaching some future state where you'll finally be close enough to God for things to change. But here's the revelation that shatters that entire paradigm. The temple is already built. The divine presence doesn't need to be invited in, earned, or achieved. It's already there, dwelling in the innermost sanctuary of your being, in complete fullness right now. Your spiritual path isn't about construction or improvement. It's about recognition. You're not becoming the temple. You're waking up to the fact that you've been the temple. All along, the journey isn't about transformation from one thing to another. It's about the removal of false beliefs that have hidden your true nature from your own awareness. Every spiritual practice, every moment of prayer, every insight you gain isn't building something new. It's dissolving the illusion that you were ever anything other than the sacred dwelling place of the infinite. The impact of this understanding on your daily life is enormous. You stop striving and start resting. You stop seeking and start recognizing. You stop trying to become worthy and start living from the worthiness that has always been your true identity. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because when this truth really lands in your consciousness, it revolutionizes how you approach every challenge, every fear, every moment of doubt. The decisions you make begin to flow from a completely different source, not from the anxious human personality trying to figure things out, but from the wisdom of the temple itself. If you're experiencing a shift in how you see yourself and your spiritual journey, share in the comments. The temple is already built. Let me share a story that illustrates the profound impact of this understanding on actual human suffering. There was a woman who lived with chronic pain for 7 years. She visited countless doctors, tried every treatment available, spent thousands on therapies, medications, and alternative approaches. Nothing worked. The pain remained, constant, unrelenting, dominating every moment of her existence. Her entire identity had become wrapped around this condition. She woke up thinking, "I am in pain." She went to sleep thinking, "I am in pain." Every conversation, every decision, every thought was filtered through this false identification. Then someone asked her a question that shattered everything. Can the temple of God hurt? Can infinite spirit suffer? At first, she was confused, even angry. The pain was real. How could anyone suggest otherwise? But the question wasn't denying her experience. It was pointing to something deeper, a fundamental confusion about identity. She had been claiming that her true self, the temple, the divine dwelling place within her, was the thing experiencing pain. But what if the pain was happening to the body while the temple remained untouched, whole, complete? This revelation didn't happen overnight. It took weeks of sitting with this question, returning to it again and again. But slowly, something shifted in her consciousness. She began to discern between the temple and the temporary experiences moving through it. The pain didn't immediately vanish, but her relationship with it transformed. She stopped saying, "I am in pain," and started recognizing there is pain being experienced, but the temple I am is whole. Within months, the pain that had dominated 7 years of her life dissolved completely. Not because she fought it, but because she stopped identifying with it. The same principle applies to every area of life, including the one that causes so much anxiety and fear for most people, money and provision. When you understand yourself as the living temple, your entire mindset around abundance undergoes a complete transformation. You realize that your job, your clients, your investments, your business, none of these are your actual source. They're simply channels through which the infinite supply dwelling in your temple flows into visible form. There was a man whose business was collapsing. Every morning he woke up thinking, "I am failing. I am going broke. I am losing everything." His prayers were desperate pleas for God to send customers to provide a miracle from outside. Behind the scenes of his struggle was a profound misunderstanding about where his supply actually originated. The breakthrough came when he stopped identifying as a broke businessman and started recognizing the truth. The temple I am houses infinite supply. The channels through which money flows might change. One business might end while another begins. One client might leave while 3 others appear. But the source dwelling within the temple never diminishes, never fails, never runs dry. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because understanding temple consciousness isn't just about solving individual problems. It's about a complete reorientation of how you move through life, how you make decisions, how you relate to everything and everyone around you. The hidden truth is that when you know yourself as the living temple, you begin to see the temple in others too. If this understanding is beginning to shift how you see your challenges, drop a comment saying, "My source is within." The real transformation begins when temple consciousness stops being something you think about occasionally and becomes your natural state of being. This is where many people stumble on their spiritual journey. They have these profound moments of insight, these glimpses of truth. But then they return to their default programming of identifying with circumstances, conditions, and limitations. The practice isn't about perfection. It's about returning again and again to the awareness of what you truly are. When you first open your eyes in the morning, before your mind fills with worries and tasks and problems, there's a moment of pure presence. In that moment, you can make a powerful choice. Instead of immediately identifying as a person with problems to solve, you can recognize, "I am the temple awakening to divine consciousness." This isn't trying to create something that doesn't exist. It's simply acknowledging what has always been true, but hidden beneath layers of false belief. As you move through your day, working, speaking, making decisions, you return to this recognition. I am the temple through which infinite intelligence flows, not as a mantra to repeat mechanically, but as a living awareness that reshapes your entire experience. But here's where the real power of temple consciousness reveals itself in moments of crisis. When fear grips your chest, when circumstances appear impossible, when everything in your world seems to be falling apart, there's a technique that can instantly shift your entire state. It's called the pause. In that moment when panic wants to take over, when your mind races to find solutions, when anxiety threatens to overwhelm you, you do something radical. You stop. You don't react. You don't try to fix. You don't engage with the fear. You simply pause and return to the fundamental question, what is the truth of this temple I am? If this message spoke to your soul, leave a like. It helps others who are searching for this understanding find their way here. The mind will scream at you that the situation is urgent, that you need to act now, that pausing is irresponsible or naive. But in that pause, something extraordinary happens. You create space between the temple and the storm that's raging around it. You remember that no matter what appears to be happening in the outer world, the inner sanctuary remains unchanged. The truth is always the same. The temple is whole. The temple is supplied. The temple is safe. Not because circumstances prove it, but because God dwells within it. This isn't denial of reality. It's discernment about what is ultimately real and what is temporary appearance. The impact of this simple practice on your quality of life is profound. Decisions that once felt overwhelming become clear. Problems that seemed insurmountable begin to dissolve. The anxiety that used to dominate your thoughts loses its grip because you're no longer identifying with the turbulence. You're resting in the unchanging truth of the temple. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because temple consciousness doesn't just change how you see yourself, it completely transforms how you see and relate to every other person you encounter. This revelation has the power to heal relationships that seemed beyond repair and bring peace where there was only conflict. If the pause is speaking to something in your experience, write in the comments, "I choose the pause." Something remarkable happens when you begin to live from temple consciousness. Your entire perception of other people transforms. You start to see that every person you encounter, whether they're aware of it or not, is also a living temple. The difficult coworker who frustrates you, the family member who hurt you deeply, the stranger who cut you off in traffic, the person who betrayed your trust. Beneath every action, every word, every behavior, there's a temple that has temporarily forgotten what it is. This awareness doesn't make you passive or doormat-like. It doesn't mean tolerating abuse or pretending harmful behavior is acceptable. What it does is eliminate the poison of judgment that otherwise consumes your peace. When someone wrongs you, the natural human response is to see them as the enemy, to build walls, to attack or withdraw. But from temple consciousness, you recognize something profoundly different. That person isn't acting from their true nature. They're acting from amnesia, from the false identity that has covered over the temple they are. Just as you've forgotten at times and acted from fear, anger, or pain, they too are lost in temporary identification with something that isn't real. This perspective shift has extraordinary power in your relationships. The resentment you've been carrying for years begins to dissolve because you see the situation through new eyes. The person didn't wrong the temple you are. They couldn't, because the temple is untouchable. They interacted with you while both of you had forgotten your true nature. When you remember, forgiveness isn't something you have to force. It happens naturally because you see the innocence behind the ignorance. But here's another revelation that deepens this understanding even further. Once you recognize yourself as the living temple, you realize that external circumstances, no matter how severe or overwhelming they appear, cannot defile your true nature. Think about the impact this has on how you process challenges. A medical diagnosis might describe something happening in the physical body, but it says absolutely nothing about the temple of consciousness that you are. The temple remains pure, whole, untouched by any condition that appears in the realm of matter. Financial loss might affect your bank account, drain your savings, change your lifestyle, but it doesn't diminish the infinite supply dwelling within your temple by even a fraction. Behind the scenes of every apparent catastrophe is this unchanging truth. The temple cannot be contaminated by what happens in the temporary world. This isn't spiritual bypassing or denying that difficult things happen. It's having the discernment to distinguish between what is eternally true and what is temporarily appearing. The body gets sick, but the temple is whole. The bank account empties, but the source is full. The relationship ends, but love remains. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because understanding these principles intellectually is one thing, but living them consistently when life becomes genuinely difficult is where the real spiritual work happens. Every seeker faces moments when temple consciousness seems like a beautiful idea that simply doesn't work in the harsh reality of their circumstances. If you're beginning to see others differently through this lens, share in the comments, "I see the temple in all." Let's be honest about what happens when this understanding truly takes root in your consciousness. There comes a point where temple consciousness is no longer something you practice. It becomes who you are. You're not a person trying to remember spiritual truths anymore. You're the living temple moving through human experience, and every single action, every conversation, every ordinary moment becomes an expression of the divine presence dwelling within you. This shift is subtle but profound. When you're working, you're not thinking, "I need to remember I'm the temple while I do this task." You simply know that the intelligence accomplishing the work is flowing from the inner sanctuary. Work stops being something you do to survive and becomes worship, the temple expressing creativity and purpose through your hands. When you speak with someone, conversation transforms into communion. You're not two separate people exchanging words. You're two temples recognizing each other, even if only one is consciously aware of it. Every moment, no matter how mundane it appears, becomes sacred because you're living from this constant awareness that you are the dwelling place of the infinite. But here's where I need to address something that every genuine spiritual seeker eventually faces, and it's rarely talked about with real honesty. There will be times when you practice everything we've discussed, when you return again and again to temple consciousness, when you pause and recognize the truth of who you are, and absolutely nothing seems to change. The illness doesn't heal. The financial pressure doesn't lift. The relationship doesn't mend. The problem you've been holding in consciousness as already resolved continues to persist in your physical experience. This is the moment when your faith is genuinely tested. Your mind screams that none of this works, that you're fooling yourself, that you need to abandon this spiritual nonsense and deal with reality like everyone else. Behind the scenes of every spiritual breakthrough is this period of seeming silence, where the temple appears not to be responding. But here's the hidden truth about how spiritual realization actually works. It operates in consciousness first, not in conditions. The transformation happens in the invisible realm of awareness long before it manifests as visible evidence in your circumstances. Sometimes that gap between inner realization and outer demonstration is minutes. Sometimes it's months. The time frame isn't what matters. What matters is remaining faithful to the truth of the temple you are, regardless of what appears. Your job isn't to make things happen or to figure out how the change will occur. Your job is simply to know what is true and refuse to be moved by what appears to contradict it. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because this is where most people either break through to genuine spiritual freedom or fall back into the old patterns of fear and struggle. The decisions you make during these dark nights of the soul determine whether temple consciousness becomes your living reality or just another spiritual concept you tried and abandoned. If you've experienced this testing period and chosen to remain faithful anyway, write in the comments, "I trust the unseen work." One of the most profound transformations that happens when you awaken to temple consciousness shows up in your relationships. Think about how most people approach connection with others. They're searching for someone to complete them, to fill the emptiness inside, to finally make them feel loved, valued, worthy. Every relationship becomes a transaction. I'll give you what you need if you give me what I need. And when the other person inevitably fails to fill that infinite void, disappointment, resentment, and pain follow. But when you recognize you are the living in temple, the entire foundation shifts. You're not empty, you're not incomplete, you're not lacking love. The temple is already full, overflowing with divine presence, infinite love, complete wholeness. You don't need another person to give you what you already are. This realization doesn't make you less interested in relationship. It makes you free to love from a completely different place. Instead of two needy people trying to extract from each other what neither can provide, you have two temples, sharing the fullness they already possess. The impact on your relationships is extraordinary. You stop manipulating, controlling, demanding. You stop keeping score. You stop the exhausting dance of trying to get love by performing, pleasing, or pretending. You love because the temple you are is love itself expressing. When someone can't meet your expectations, you don't collapse because your foundation isn't in them. It's in the divine presence dwelling within you. When someone leaves, you grieve the loss, but you don't lose yourself because you know what you are doesn't depend on who stays or goes. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because everything we've explored leads to this ultimate integration, living every single moment as the conscious temple of God, not just during meditation or when you remember, not just when things are peaceful or when you're feeling spiritual, but always, in every circumstance, through every experience. You wake in the morning as the temple, becoming aware of itself. You move through your work as the temple expressing divine intelligence. You love as the temple, sharing the infinite love it contains. You rest at night as the temple returning to conscious stillness. There's a beautiful metaphor that captures this perfectly. Think of a wave on the ocean. The wave has its own shape, its own movement, its own unique expression. It rises and falls, crashes on the shore, interacts with other waves. But the entire time, it never forgets what it truly is, ocean. It's not trying to become ocean. It's not hoping that one day it might be worthy of being ocean. It simply knows that beneath the temporary form of wave, the eternal substance is ocean, always has been, always will be. This is what it means to live as the conscious temple. You're the human expression that never forgets the divine presence dwelling within. You still have your personality, your preferences, your unique way of moving through the world. You'll still make mistakes, still have moments of forgetfulness, still experience the full range of human emotion. But underneath every experience, there's this unshakable knowing of what you are. If this vision of integration speaks to where you want to go on your journey, share in the comments, "I am the wave that knows the ocean." You know, if you've made it this far in our conversation today, something inside you is recognizing the truth of what we've been exploring together. This isn't just information you stumbled upon by accident. This is part of your journey, part of your awakening to the temple you've always been. And I'm genuinely grateful you chose to spend this time here with me. If these teachings are resonating with where you are on your path, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel. I create content like this regularly, practical spiritual wisdom that you can actually apply to transform your daily experience. These aren't abstract theories. They're living principles that change how you show up in the world when you really understand them. And if this message landed exactly when you needed to hear it, let me know by writing in the comments, "This was meant for me." I read every comment, and there's something powerful about declaring your recognition, about putting words to the shift that's happening in your awareness. If you found value in what we shared today, a simple like on the video helps this message reach others who are searching for exactly this understanding. Someone out there is asking the same questions you were asking before you clicked on this video, and your engagement helps them find their way here. There's a video right here that goes even deeper into how to live from this consciousness when life gets really challenging, when the old patterns try to pull you back and doubt creeps in. Click and continue with me over there. Let's keep walking this path together.